What's cracking, trainers? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. Palkia Origin is coming back to raids here in Pokemon GO very shortly, and it's about time for us to update the Master League PvP IV deep dive that I did probably last time they were in raids. There's been some new additions to the meta, so we're going to go through it and see what IVs you want to get on your Palkia, hopefully, to be able to build it. In this video, what we're going to go over is the Palkia Origin matchups and some key wins and losses against the Master League meta. Then we're going to be taking a look at all three different stats, attack, defense, and HP, and going through each one from a range of 12 to 14 to show what is dropped from these matchups by losing these stats. And at the very end, we're going to be going over the best minimum IV spread that you can build a Palkia with confidence. Before we get into the nerdy stuff, I'm going to go over the terms to know here, as these are things that are going to come up that you may never have heard of before, so we're going to get you up to speed. Break points are an attack stat point that allows you to deal one additional damage via fast or charged move in a given matchup. Inversely, the bulk point is a defensive stat point that is going to allow you to take one less damage incoming in a given matchup via fast or charged move. The zeros, ones, and twos, and any mix of these are going to be the 0 shield, 1 shield, 2 shield, different shielding scenarios. And this video is going to assume that all matchups are even shields and energy unless otherwise mentioned. Premium versus thrifting IVs. Premium is going to be that perfect bare minimum without giving up anything Palkia that we're going to be able to build. Whereas thrifting, if we want to be able to drop some stats or give up some matchups in some places, we'll have to be thrifting, so to speak. And that's going to be giving up some of the less common scenarios, things like Shadow Metagross and Dragonite that just aren't as common in the meta nowadays. But it's good to know that if you do see them, you may give up some matchups against them depending on what your stat spread looks like. And then Best Buddy boosted is going to be notated by BB or just Best Buddy. So here's how Palkia fares against the Master League meta. Overall, generally speaking, it is one of the top Pokemon in the entire format, commonly cored with Zacian and Zamazenta Crown form, typically rocking the fast move Dragon Breath because of the versatility of a one-turn fast move makes it a little bit easier to manage than 3 turns with Dragon Tail, despite that doing slightly more damage. And then you're going to usually want Aqua Tail and Spatial Rend, which is a currently only obtainable. By the way, I'm not venting here whatsoever, that this is the 3rd time these things have been in raids, and we don't have a way to guarantee the move, and I hope that I eat those words and they change it before the event gets debuted. But at the moment, the only way you can get Spatial Rend is by catching it at a raid with the move or trading it with somebody who has one that caught it at the raid with the move. You can't TM it, you can't evolve it, you can't form change it, you can't do nothing. So if you don't have Spatial Rend, you run Fire Blast, and that's where you can nuke the crown forms. Anyway, the key wins and key losses here pretty well explained here by most of the things that have fire in their typing or their fast moves are going to have losing matchups. And if you're weak to Aqua Tail, you're probably not going to have a good time. Therian Landorus, one of those things. Kyurem White and Black, if they're on Dragon Breath or Dragon Tail, typically fare very well into Palkia because they just out-stat product the Palkia by using those fast moves. But Solgaleo on Fire Spin, Kyogre, double resisted Waterfall, one of Palkia's most dominant matchups. You also have wins into things like Yveltal, Dawn Wings, Necrozma, Zygarde complete if you can land that Spatial Rend, and Mewtwo. You're going to be losing to pretty much all the meta fairy types, especially Crown Zacian and Zamazenta. However, they do have win conditions if you're up a shield. Dialga, both forms just, unfortunately, they just send it right back to its Pokeball. Rhyperior generally wins, and most trainers that have it know it does. So you pretty much need to be expecting to lose the 2-shield scenario versus the non-Shadow Rhyperior and the 1s and 2s against Shadow Rhyperior. You are losing to Duskmane Necrozma. Melmetal is also a loss in most shielding scenarios. Metagross lands that Earthquake, and Lunala also going to be a loss because it gets to that Moonblast. If we apply the Best Buddy boost, here are the following gigantor list of things that get affected. Most of the things that are in this list, trainers, are going to be 0 shield scenarios where you're either just barely able to get to that Spatial Rend, or the opponent has a shield and you survive long enough to get to 2 moves. Melmetal even takes a loss in the straight zeros. Burn and Douse Genesect apparently pop up on the list. There's some other things here that also come up as 0 shield flips like Shadow Metagross, Kyurem Normal, and Best Buddy Shadow Ho-Oh I thought was an interesting pickup because Ho-Oh typically as the Shadow, the Brave Bird, is enough to one-shot the Palkia with a couple of Incinerates after. So that is how the Shadow Ho-Oh is probably able to win this matchup. Best Buddy actually gains a defensive bulk point against, I believe, the Brave Bird that it throws and allows Palkia to maintain that matchup and flip it in the 0-1s. 1-shield matchups, you're still going to get Melmetal, but you're also going to grab Giratina Altered if you ever see them. And Shadow Mamoswine with Powder Snow is also, again, I don't really see many of those. I also don't really see any Best Buddy Cobalions, but those are something you pick up in the 2s with the Best Buddy boost. As far as our bulk points go, taking 1 less damage against fast moves from the opponents, non-Best Buddy Palkia and Best Buddy Palkia are going to have the exact same list here, whereas we're going to have Dialga Origin, Therian Landorus, Shadow Dragonite, and Tapu Lele be bulk points that get picked up, and that Therian Landorus one does matter in some matchups, and so it's not a bad thing to be able to have. CMP ties, you're going to be picking up the Mirror, and there's nothing else. Palkia's attack stat is very much on its own in its own space, so thrifting a little bit on attack, key spoiler here, thrifting a little bit on attack really doesn't affect a whole lot except the Mirror, which is incredibly common. And the only reason that I go over this attack stat in the first place is to educate. I'm not saying you should build a 14, a 13, or 12 attack Palkia. I personally wouldn't even consider building it unless it was 15 attack, because having that win against the opponent Palkia in CMP and all these different shielding scenarios, just knowing that you're on a level playing field with them and you're not going to have any lose conditions if you can set yourself up in that matchup, I'm not building anything less than a 15 attack Palkia. But let's say you have to. You don't have a choice. You don't get lucky enough to get one with 15 attack and decent other stats. You're just losing Palkia Origin in 0s, 1s, 2s, basically everywhere. You're also losing the CMP. But the only change here goes from Shadow Gyarados going from a win to a tie in the 1s, so it's a tie. And still the same thing down here at 12 attack, and we're just adding the Dragonite 1 to 2 shield situation onto the list of things that we're giving up here by going down to 12 attack. So really, 14 is like the thriftable minimum if you don't care about the Mirror. Very similar stuff here, except with the opponents having Best Buddy boost, we're going to be having the Dragonite breakpoint lost in that matchup, which does at that point definitely affect the 1 to 2 shields matchup. It's because the opponent is able to get to that second Dragon Claw and shield your second Aqua Tail and be able to knock out with that second move. Not until 12 attack do we see any differences where Kyurem Normal becomes something that we lose a breakpoint to, and that thus also flips the 1 to 2s with the Best Buddy boost. Again, this is going to be compared a Hundo Palkia with the Best Buddy boost to the 14, 13, and 12 attack Palkia with the Best Buddy boost. These are the things that are affected. These are not comparing to the non-Best Buddy Palkia. This is only Best Buddy Palkia, and the only thing we're losing at 14 attack is a breakpoint to Shadow Dialga, which you are going to see one out of the entire calendar year, I guarantee it, unless you're up against somebody who's creating content like right after it came out. 13 attack, though, we definitely start seeing a list of things lost here, and it's already at this point that I'm drawing that line and saying I'm not going under 14 for anything, no matter what, and that's only if I have to go under 15 at all. But we're losing that Shadow Dialga breakpoint. Dawnwings Necrozma and Shadow Mamoswine are something that we're also losing breakpoints to. Dawnwings Necrozma's matchup is affected here. We do win the 0s normally, but lose it here. We're also losing to pretty much every shielding situation of Palkia that ever existed, as well as the 1-to-1s with Melmetal and 1-to-2s Shadow Mamoswine. At 12 attack, the list is the exact same as 13 attack, so I guess if those are where you have to go, they're interchangeable at least. Now, when you have Best Buddy Palkia versus the Best Buddy, man, anything wearing a Best Buddy ribbon, that's one of the 3 things that's on the opponent's team in the worst case, and you're basically just dropping all Palkia matchups. Cobalion shows up, however, on this list in the 2-to-2s matchups because of an Aqua Tail breakpoint that gets lost that flips the matchup in the 2 shields back into its favor. And the only thing that gets added down at 12 attack to this list is going to be the 1-to-2 shield situation with Dragonite, where we're losing that breakpoint again. Now, back to non-Best Buddied Palkia, we're going to be focusing now on the defense stat. So defense is going to be the thing that allows you to keep the bulk points, and in the 14 defense and under, we're definitely giving some of these up, where we're going to see Therian Landorus, yeah, Tapu Lele, kind of not as meh, but Shadow Dragonite and Dialga Origin. Like, Dialga Origin just deletes the Palkia when it's at 14 defense when it gets that breakpoint. So you need to be careful about that Dialga Origin, because even though we're against non-Best Buddied meta, by Best Buddying itself, Dialga Origin gets the breakpoint no matter what if you're not Best Buddied. So if you're focused on the Dialga Origin bulk point, you must have 15 defense and or be Best Buddied. Therian Landorus does affect some matchups in the 0-to-1s, and Shadow Ho-Oh, because of the defensive bulk point lost to that Brave Bird, can take the 0-to-1s from us at 14 defense as well. At 13 defense, we're going to be chalking a Giratina Altered and Yveltal to the list of bulk points lost, meaning that we're taking 1 extra damage from Giratina Altered Shadow Claws and Yveltal Sucker Punches. We're now adding Giratina Altered with Shadow Claw to the 0-to-1s losses because of that bulk point that is lost. And down at 12 defense, we're adding Virizion to the list. I mean, if you see a Virizion, I just salute the trainer out of respect, but you might see it once in a while. But Firefang Reshiram also pops in as a 12 defense bulk point loss, so those Firefangs probably, I don't even know, I assume they do 1, but they do 1 extra damage to the Palkia that double resists them, so just good to know. When you have the opponents have the best buddy boost and you do not rush around with Fire Fang that were best buddy that are not on this list, that were on the last list, already have that breakpoint against you because of their best buddy boost. 2s and 1s, no matchups affected, but the 0s is going to be lost to Guillotine Altered. We're going to be adding Goodra to the list of things that do an extra damage to Palkia at 13 defense as well as 12 defense, and now we start losing the Virizion 2-shield matchup as well as some Goodra matchups as well because of that breakpoint they're able to gain on us. At 12 defense, Lugia enters the list of things, and we don't have any difference in the matchups as opposed to 13 defense. So now we take a look at Palkia with the best buddy boost versus the non-best buddied meta. So if the opponent doesn't have that best buddy boost and we have to thrift, what happens? We're losing the 1s at 14 defense to Melmetal, which is not a bad matchup to, like, it's okay to accept it as a loss, but it's one of those things where it's really, really nice to have as a win. It's a valuable matchup to be able to have because it's not uncommon, but Shadow Groudon's pretty uncommon, I would have to say, as is Guillotine Altered. Tapu Lele and Shadow Dragonite creep onto the bulk point loss list here, and in the 12 defense sector, we're also going to be putting Origin Dialga now back on there. So if you have the best buddy boost, the opponent does not, you can go down to 12 defense and keep that bulk point. But again, most Dialgas are probably going to be best buddied because of the mirror matchup. They're usually going to have it already. So just assume that they'll probably have the best buddy and build accordingly. We are dropping that 0-1 shield matchup against Landorus, which again is not a matchup. That's as equivalent to Melmetal in value, even if not more. So keep in mind, the list with best buddy versus best buddy meta is nearly identical to the one where we have nothing with the best buddy boost. Very few things are different here. We're going to be having bulk points lost to, again, Therian Landorus, Tapu Lele, Shadow Dragonite, and Dialga Origin. So we cannot really thrift on our defense if we want to be able to keep that Dialga Origin bulk point, which is really important if that thing ever becomes meta relevant again, because it does allow you to have more play in that matchup. We're taking those shield disadvantage losses to Therian Landorus and Guillotine Altered, and then down to 13 defense, we're going to be grabbing the same things as in addition to Guillotine Altered Yveltal once again showing up on the list, and we're dropping Kyurem Normal in the 0 shield situation and another Giratina Altered matchup in the 0-1s. And then at 12 defense, we're going to be seeing Fire Fang Reshiram once again add to the list of bulk points that we lose, and Shadow Metagross also adds itself to the list, as well as Shadow Ho-Oh to the things that we just can't win against with that 12 defense stat if everything's best buddied. And then Virizian's back on the list again. Now, HP is usually a thriftable stat. However, I'm here to change your mind. 14. No matchups affected against non-best buddied opponents, but you lose that 2s to Virizion. Okay, whatever. 13 HP though. 0s, no matchups, great, but the 1s loses the shield advantage Crown Zacian as well as every form of Palkia in the 1 and 2 shielding scenarios here. And I guess Shadow Latios is on the list too if it matters, and Virizion creeps back in the 2 shields in all cases here. But Crown Zacian is already a bad thing. If you can win that with a shield advantage, do not lose that. 14 HP is the hard line that I'm drawing right now. If for some unfortunate reason you have to drop down to 12 HP, you do lose Dialga Altered, which is a lot less common, as well as Genesect Burn and Douse form, and the same things as above, except we're adding Zarude and Lugia to losses in the 1 shield and 2 shield situations respectively. Now, if Palkia is lacking that best buddy boost, but the opponent has the best buddy boost, we're losing the Shadow Ho-Oh matchup with 14 HP. So that is already a really unfortunate thing to have to lose, but it's only on best buddied Shadow Ho-Ohs, which are probably going to be fairly uncommon, as Shadow Ho-Oh itself is fairly uncommon at the moment. Losing those 1 shield situations in the mirror does really find itself to be unfortunate. The reason why is because the matchups assume that both of you are throwing charge moves or only one of you is throwing a charge move. Realistically, it's still a tie with less than this much HP or defense because there's no bulk points lost to Palkia. It's just this situation where the one with the higher stats wins just because that's the way it is. So we can also kind of ignore Palkia to a degree in this video if it mentions Palkia, just because that matchup is already so tight that it's very difficult to give you any wiggle room. It's really just going to be a who's Dragon Breath KOs first. But Shadow Latios is still on the list. Shadow Ho-Oh remains on the list in the 0s at 13 HP and will stay there all the way down to 12 HP. A lot of the same things showing up on this list again as the last one. Zarude not showing up on this list, however, in the 1 to 2s, but Lugia remains on the 2 shields losses at 12 HP, as well as the 2s with Virizion all the way through. If we equip Palkia with that best buddy boost and put it against some non-best buddy Pokemon, you're going to be dropping the 0s to Kyurem Normal at 170 or at 14 HP. You're going to be dropping the Kyurem Normal 0 shield situation and Genesect Burn and Douse in the 0-1s. Very uncommon. I'm not too worried about those. You're also dropping that Giratina Altered matchup because that's just how close that matchup is. With if you just thrift on any of these stats, you may potentially lose that. But again, Giratina Altered, not very common. Shadow Metagross and Shadow Ho-Oh are added to our zeros losses list here at 13 HP, and then Verzian comes back, as well as the ones to Melmetal being lost. Down at 12 HP, the ones are greatly affected because we added all those Palkia matchups, which again, may be ties, may not be ties, depending on how the matchup plays out. But Shadow Latios does find itself on the list as well in the 2s, in the 1s. Now, with everything being best buddied here, we're going to be dropping the zeros against some very unexpected Pokemon. And by unexpected, I mean you're probably never going to see them. But Melmetal zeros is kind of important if you care about it. And now we're attacking on zeros, Groudon, Shadow Ho-Oh 01s when we drop down to 13 HP. So realistically, like I could be okay with dropping Melmetal here if I had to. But I don't think, like, Shadow Ho-Oh just feels like something that we should keep, honestly. But if you're okay with it because it's very rare, don't hate it. But the zeros, 1s, 2s, nothing new here. The same old villains are down on that list, and so now we roll into the verdict. All right, so final words, final thoughts. If you're looking for premium IVs, you want to build that 15, 15, 14, because even though we're giving up a very uncommon situation against things like Melmetal and Ho-Oh at 14 HP with their best buddies equipped, most of the time, I would also say we should have our best buddy boost equipped on Palkia. Palkia is my top candidate for both a best buddy equipped to a team in the Master League, as well as a future bottle cap because of how unforgiving its stats are. Just like Lunala, it has a lot of things that it starts to give up, and having that mirror be on almost every team potentially is something that's very much worth having. If you ever have to thrift under, the only thing that you're really giving up with attack is the mirror, and very few other things that are mission critical. But Landorus and Ho-Oh are nice to have, so as far as defense, you can thrift as low as you feel like you need to, or if you don't have a Palkia with 15 defense and HP, which is the goal, of course, as we all know it, we're going to be rating for that exact thing. If for some reason you're unable to get one here, just keep in mind what you'd be giving up by not having 100% IV on Palkia, and just adjust your play accordingly. That's one of the most common things that I get you guys asking me in these comments is, can I build this if it's less than this? And it's like, of course you can, absolutely. But just adjust your play pattern or your strategy so that you know what to avoid. If you know, okay, if I'm going to be against this with 14 defense, I don't get to keep the best buddy Landorus matchup, or something like that, and just try to play accordingly, or make sure you have a shield for that matchup. Same thing with HP, but 14 is the lowest we can go without losing that Crown Zacian 1-0s, which is common enough when using Palkia as a closer that I feel like it's kind of necessary if you're trying to maintain as many matchups as possible. So that's going to be an important one. And down with the best buddy boost, the same thing, but for different reasons, right? You still want 15 attack. Not only is it Landorus and Melmetal matchups here, but also the Dialga Origin breakpoint that it gets against you when you don't have 15 defense, even with the best buddy boost, is just something that is really nice to have whenever it comes back into the meta. 14 HP keeps matchups against Melmetal, Shadow Ho-Oh, and various Palkias, but not much else, and that you can absolutely thrift if you're rocking your best buddy boost. As far down as 12 HP, maybe lower. I only checked as far as 12, but it might be something that you can do. I appreciate you guys are enjoying these deep dives, and I would love to know comments down below of anything that you're looking to see. I'm going to be holding off a little bit, doing fewer of the Great League and Ultra League ones until the new season news is given to us, but I'm going to be looking to dive back in with a few of these that are good for like XLs. I think I'm going to do a Zoomerl Blastoise or a couple that I want to work on, but also the Master League stuff as it comes in rotation. I'll continue to do these until I've pretty much done them all, and if I don't need to update them. But let me know in the comments if you got anything you want to see, and I appreciate y'all for watching. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.